This video is sponsored by Squarespace. If you want an amazing online presence for your business or brand, Squarespace is the all-in-one platform for building websites and online stores. We've been greeted with a lot of cartoon educators throughout the years. Some are considered the top of their subject and are well loved, and some couldn't care less about their students and are only there for a paycheck. But which of these animated educators sculpt young minds for the better, and which ones are downright terrible? I'm Kyle with Wicked Binge, and this is Cartoon Teachers Good to Evil. For this list, we'll be covering some of the most well-known cartoon teachers. Some a staple of our childhood, and many became relatable in adulthood. As usual, we'll be starting with the most pure and noble character and working our way down. These teachers are the good. Our gold medal of good goes to Mr. Simmons. Mr. Simmons was known as someone who supported all of the traits that made his students unique. For fans of the show, everyone knew his frequent use of the word special when talking about his class and their interests. He won Teacher of the Year, and though he didn't make for a good principal, he was enough of a fan favorite to reappear in the Hey Arnold Jungle movie. Teachers like Mr. Simmons don't come around often, and you're lucky if you've had one. Our silver medal of good goes to Lisa's favorite substitute, Mr. Bergstrom. He filled in for Miss Hoover and made quite the introduction.
I'm Mr. Bergstrom. Feel free to make fun of my name if you want.
This was an early episode of The Simpsons during a time when Lisa was a far more vulnerable character, who was just beginning to gain validation for her talents and intellect. With Bergstrom, Lisa was finally able to express herself and find confidence in showing off her saxophone playing and intellect. Though he was only shown in this one episode, the man gave a lasting impression and left Lisa with some much-needed advice. The bronze medal of good goes to the peace-loving Miss Grotke. Unlike many of the other teachers in recess, Grotke was always patient with her students and saw the potential each one of them had. She was sweet and honest and made a point to tell the truth to her students. She didn't sugarcoat the way the corporations pollute the planet and brainwash their consumers, or the issues she had with the government, explaining that many other countries thrived in ways the US does not. And of course, you have to love the fact that she had busted out her martial arts skills to protect her students. Next up, we have Miss Frizzle. Known for her adventurous spirit and never-ending optimism, she's an expert at nearly every subject from the human body to weather to history. While seeing her field trips play out on screen is nothing short of entertaining, we have to drop her a little lower since it is putting the kids' lives in a lot of danger.
Whenever a door closes, a window opens.
But we aren't going to place her too low since Frizzle always has a backup plan when things are becoming too hairy. While the trips are something that would concern parents or the school, Miss Frizzle obviously has some less than human abilities on her side. Taking the next spot, we have Miss Baker. One of the main teachers on Clarence, Miss Baker is shown inside and outside of the classroom during the series, which sets her apart from a lot of educators on our list. She was always encouraging all forms of expression and helped her students to channel their energy in a way that would be fulfilling, such as when she advised Clarence to do comics for the school paper rather than drawing on all of his assignments. And though Baker clearly had some doubts about her life, she ultimately let her passion for teaching lead her. We're gonna go ahead and throw in Mr. Van Driesen from Beavis and Butthead next. Now, it's easy to make fun of this soft-spoken hippie, and we all laughed when he got gun-butted by a rifle. But Mr. Van Driesen is clearly a caring teacher. Anyone who has the amount of patience that he has when dealing with Beavis and Butthead deserves a lot of credit.
Something's wrong.
Heck, he even got them to put actual effort into the craft of animation. Next up is Nigel Ratburn. Once believed to be harsh and evil, Ratburn quickly made his way as one of the most fondly remembered teachers during our childhood. Ratburn did his best not to dumb down his curriculum. We have to give him props for studying as many topics as he does, to the point that he is obsessed over defeating the smartboard Hugo in a game of wits. Next up, we have driving instructor Mrs. Puff. Now, we won't be going into the theories of how she became a driving instructor since they are a bit dark, but we did want to mention her as a typically fun teacher that liked to use reward systems to motivate her students. She was determined to get SpongeBob out of her class by any means necessary, but we can't really blame her for that.
Road? What happened to the road?
After having to endure 100 different car accidents, we would want to do the same thing. Next is Mr. Lancer. Though Danny struggled a lot in school, Lancer was always seen pushing Danny and the other students to do better.
Pantless again, Mr. Fenton.
Even being quoted at one time, while all beat up, nothing was going to stop him from giving them an education. And of course, everyone remembers his use of book titles in place of profanity. Next we have the woman-turned-troll, Miss Skolnick. And we don't mean that figuratively. She may not have been Teacher of the Year, but she certainly wasn't the worst instructor. What we dropped her lower for was her impatience with her students, but she was also shown to be protective of them. Skolnick wasn't the best at knowing how to deal with Star and sometimes lashed out about her relationship troubles. But after Star accidentally turned her into a troll, Skolnick wound up embracing the change rather than being resentful towards her, seeing the newfound strength as a way to reclaim her prime years. She's even seen aiding Star on a couple of adventures, including saving the students from being hurt on an interdimensional field trip. Next we have the legendary Edna Krabappel. Even for those who aren't the biggest fans of the long-running show, you likely know who she is, even if it's only for her iconic laugh and fondness for cigarettes. Over the years, Edna has been shown as a romantic at heart. She shows a lot of displeasure towards Bart, but rather than dismiss him, she makes an effort to try and help him improve. She also allows him to find things to do when in detention to keep him occupied. She offers him extra credit when he shows to have actually studied and learned something for his exam, so he wouldn't get held back. And she was the one to lead the fight for better supplies for the school to help all the students' lives improve. Moving on to another instructor from Clarence, Mr. Reese. A man bent on romance and justice, he has his immature moments, but is overall a good guy. He's often seen keeping the peace on school grounds and overlooking detention. But while it would be easy for him to be a mean guy, he isn't. Mr. Reese instead often looks to the students for their input and tries to meet them halfway. He had been the one to help Clarence get back into writing his comic, and the way Reese and Clarence hunted down who threw the meatball sub was an endearing episode. Next we have the stubborn Shoop. She's in charge of the students when playing and doing physical education, and takes the job of molding the kids into model citizens very seriously. She isn't the most approachable woman, often shunning anyone trying to be close to her, but we see through her memories that she was raised sheltered by a stern mother, who didn't believe in letting Shoop have fun with other kids, so we'll give her some leeway. Next is the one-time substitute of Miss Baker, Meg Julep. Fresh to the teaching game, she's a bundle of nerves for her entire time on screen. She has trouble managing the students and is easily spoken over by Jeffrey, who tries to take control of the class. She doesn't notice when Clarence slips away to find Miss Baker. She isn't the most noticeable person in the room, but she's always seeking to improve and tries the best she can. We can only imagine how much her teaching skills improved after she asked for Miss Baker's advice. With that said, we've arrived at the neutral territory. These characters fall in the gray area. But before we get into our next section, I'd first like to take a minute to talk about today's sponsor, Squarespace. We've been working hard to grow our network of Wicked Binge channels, but one of the things that we've put off is putting together a professional website for our brand. This is actually very important for us because a professional website can help us find new talent and freelancers, as well as sponsorships and other business opportunities. Luckily, Squarespace was cool enough to hook us up with everything that we needed. Their platform provides all the tools you need as a YouTuber, a business owner, or a content creator to build amazing websites and online stores. Squarespace is user-friendly enough for anyone and can be used to create incredibly slick and professional sites for any brand, which is why it's easily my favorite service out there. I've been using it to build our website and love the results. You can build pages for your videos, connect with your audience, put together members-only content, send email communications, and utilize audience insights all on one service. Head over to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/wikibinge, and you'll get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Link in the description. Now, let's get back to the video. Taking the first spot in the gray is Mr. Small. A well-meaning guidance counselor, he makes a point to not hurt anyone or anything if he can avoid it, to the point that it can completely consume him. He's driven to be inspirational to the point that he would be nominated for some sort of award, but he isn't good at helping his students. Even his song, Take My Advice, is just a collection of standard things people are told growing up, such as walk a mile in someone else's shoes, or what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. but we give him credit for caring and at least making an effort. Next we have Gumball and Darwin's main teacher, Miss Simeon. She isn't really known for being the most understanding. In fact, there are plenty of times where she lashes out while on the hunt for someone to discipline, completely disregarding anyone trying to talk some sense into her. However, the show is centered around Gumball and Darwin, who are often the ones causing trouble and in the wrong. For all the scoldings Simeon gives the two boys concerning their poor grades and tardiness, we also see her making a point to congratulate them on any work they do well, such as when Gumball wrote dental hygiene all 3 of his answers for a small test. Though 1 out of 3 isn't the best score, she did make sure to show happiness at this being the best he had ever done on a test in her class. That doesn't sound like a lot, but considering we see that she has poor social skills in an earlier episode, we give her some credit. Next we have the 3-time winner of Tom Landry's Substitute Teacher of the Year, Peggy Hill. While we love King of the Hill, we will be the first to admit that Peggy is not the best teacher. Sure, she loves her students, but Peggy doesn't always make the smartest call. The big issue is that her ego and narcissism don't allow her to admit to her flaws, and ultimately she doesn't improve. She refuses to acknowledge that her Spanish skills are not good, even when she accidentally kidnaps a child during a field trip.
Now give her some space. She does not like you.
And we can't forget the time she pretended to be a nun just to get a full-time teaching job. Next we have Lisa's music teacher, Mr. Dewey. Known for his sour face and strict teachings, he doesn't settle for his students to perform less than they are capable of. But we have to place him lower on the list for one episode in particular. Like with the gym teacher, Dewey had disregarded Lisa when she was displaying signs of depression. Now, we get that having students not play what is being taught in class can be a huge distraction, but Dewey then went on to lecture Lisa before a performance, asking if there would be any more creativity from her. Clearly not in the mood to deal with her going against the lesson, but also not being bothered to alert someone to her sudden shift in behavior. But finally, we've reached the dark side. These characters are the bad and the evil. Starting out the bad section, we have the embodiment of gloom herself, Miss Bitters. She isn't the nurturing type, but the older you get while watching episodes of Invader Zim, the more her lectures make sense.
The universe is just doomed.
We see in flashbacks that Miss Bitters had once been a happy and hopeful girl that wanted to be an astronaut, but got some harsh reality checks from life that made her the woman she is today. So as a result, she teaches her students that they are most likely to amount to little more than their parents, working dead-end jobs in a filthy city, dealing with ungrateful people. Next up, we have Morty's math teacher, Mr. Goldenfull. He was a little tricky to place since we can't say the lessons are entirely his fault. Just from getting glimpses at the tests and some of the sections of the lessons we hear, he teaches what is basic math. And it's difficult to make something like that engaging for high school students. Not to mention Goldenfold has some clearly inappropriate thoughts concerning his students as seen in his dream version of Summer, and how he doesn't force Morty to wake up from his own dream about Jessica. Next we have Lisa's regular teacher, Miss Hoover. Unlike Edna, she's not quite as memorable, and when it comes to teacher strikes, she treats it more like a vacation, rushing from class before the students have time to process the information. She's usually seen jaded, speaking in deadpan tones and waiting for the day to end. And she took the risk of giving Lisa a B+ rather than an A simply because she felt everyone needed a mark on their record somewhere. Next we have to mention the gym teacher Brunella. Though she's seen as a pretty frequent background character in Springfield, she doesn't have a lot of major interactions with our main protagonists. The thing that drops her far on our ranking is one conversation in particular in an early episode. When Lisa struggles with depression, she's unable to find the motivation to participate in class, which leads Brunella approaching her and asking why Lisa wasn't dodging the ball. When Lisa replies she's too sad, she brushes her off and continues the game.
That's ridiculous. Now let's see some enthusiasm.
Now, we don't want to say that Brunella is a heartless person, but this was really cold. Even if mental health was dealt with differently at the time this episode released, this still looks very careless. Moving on, we have the 3rd grade teacher, Audrey. We see her when Bart is sent back a grade while Lisa is advanced one. She isn't a malicious teacher exactly, but she clearly doesn't know how to nurture a student taking the chance to take on a more challenging curriculum. And it was a weird choice to decide to not only connect Lisa and Bart's Bart's desk in a prison-like fashion, but why would you boost Bart's grade higher just because Lisa was getting emotional?
Sobbing only pushes Bart's grade higher.
We have to add another teacher from Beavis and Butthead, Coach Buzzcut. There isn't a whole lot to say about this angry guy. He is always so enraged that he can't help but shout to his class. He bullies his students and he's prone to be violent. Granted, Beavis and Butthead are not ideal students to say the least, but that doesn't excuse this guy's behavior. Though he did defend the boys from Mr. Candy at one point, which earns him a couple of points. Next we have teachers tied from The Simpsons, Miss Cantwell and Mr. Layson. Unlike Mr. Bergstrom, Cantwell was a sub that had no interest in getting to know her students past what they did in her class. And once she saw Lisa, she had decided right away that she was going to torment the poor girl. We learned by the end of the episode that the reason for Cantwell's bullying was due to her own experiences in grade school.
Bookworms like me can't stand party girls like you.
She labeled Lisa as a stereotypical mean pretty girl that planned to get by on her looks, even though Lisa was seen putting forth effort in her studies. The torment led to Lisa struggling with her studies and almost enduring a breakdown. In her brother Bart's case, he was stuck with Mr. Layson. Layson was a cutthroat man that used physical discipline to intimidate Bart. While he and Cantwell were both in the wrong for picking on students, we can at least give Cantwell some credit for not lashing out quite like Layson did. Bart had endured being shaved, violently shocked, and chased with fire before Layson was finally fired from his position. Next we have the teacher who is obsessed with fairy godparents, Mr. Crocker. Timmy often claims that Crocker is out to get him, and since the show is from Timmy's perspective, it's easy to sympathize with why he would think that. After all, Crocker does love failing students. But the fact is, Timmy is a bad student. He doesn't do well on tests, never does his homework, and does the bare minimum in class. With that said, Crocker is absolutely insane and dangerous, and without a doubt one of the worst teachers you could ask for.
Stare at the board until the lunch bell rings.
Finally, we have to give the gold medal for worst teacher to South Park's Mr. Garrison. While there have been a few teachers on the show, none of them are quite as well known and well featured as Mr. Garrison. While Garrison certainly isn't the smartest guy or most capable teacher, we do see him invent new modes of transportation, as well as run the country. But we obviously have to drop him for a number of reasons. The most obvious being that it's not a good look to force rodents up your assistant's butt in front of a bunch of 4th graders. He's also very mean, insulting, and discriminating against many of his students. As funny as his character is, I think we can all agree that Mr. Garrison is a bad guy. Even when you disregard the absolutely insane stuff he is guilty of, Mr. Garrison's actual teaching methods are terrible. In early seasons, we see that he spends much of the time in class explaining sitcom trivia and other useless information. And when a student gets an answer wrong during math, he belittles and insults them. And for these reasons, Garrison is absolutely the worst educator out there. But what do you think? When it comes to cartoons, who are the most good and evil teachers? Let us know in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit that notification bell and binge our Good to Evil playlist, where we break down the morality of the characters in your favorite cartoons, shows, and movies. But most importantly, stay wicked.